The Brutalist is the latest film by director Bradley Corbett and starring Adrian Brody, Guy Pearce, Felicity Jones, and a whole bunch of other talented actors. It follows the story of Laszlo, a Jewish immigrant who is given a seemingly prestigious opportunity to lead the design and construction of a massive building at the behest of a wealthy businessman. What follows is a two-act story shaped in the mold of past epic classics like Once Upon a Time in America. Now, The Brutalist has been on my radar ever since A24 dropped that banger of a trailer a few months back, and it's recently been released into more than 2 theaters worldwide, so I finally had an opportunity to check it out. Being a Wisconsin boy, trying to catch these sorts of art house flicks is equivalent to trying to find a needle in a haystack while also trying to solve a Rubik's Cube as it actively fights against you. It's hard to watch these kinds of movies in the Midwest, that's what I mean. And I'm going to be honest, I purchased my ticket the moment it became available about a week ago, but when the day finally came for my screening, I was kind of in a crappy mood. My job has been sending me all over the lovely Midwest, so I wasn't actually at my most energetic. And news broke that David Lynch died a few hours before my screening. Lynch is, or I guess was, God that's depressing, one of my favorite filmmakers ever. So needless to say, the wind was knocked out of my sails. Rest in peace to the legend, by the way. But I drove down to the theater, made sure I had taken a potty break beforehand, and locked in for this 3.5-hour epic. And holy crap, I'm still buzzing. The Brutalist is a lot, and I don't just mean that in terms of material, obviously, but in terms of its themes and ideas. I've been going through a PTA kick lately, and I saw his influences all over this thing. Obviously, with its grand epic scale, I saw shades of There Will Be Blood, but even down to the very connection between the two leads and their first chance encounter, you could see shades of both The Master and Boogie Nights. But even with these apparent influences, director Bradley Corbett cements himself as a filmmaker with his own unique vision. Admittedly, I haven't seen his other stuff, but now I'm super curious and checking more of them out. Because you just can't make a movie like this these days. I thought it was illegal. From the very opening shot, you know that you're in for a true Hollywood spectacle of a drama. The camera is locked in on Adrian Brody as he's making his way through the dark corridor, and it's filmed with such tight suspense, and the whole movie is constructed with sequences like this. And of course, we cannot talk about The Brutalist without bringing up the performances. Brody is the lead here, and I dare say that this is a career-best performance. The character Laszlo is an immigrant and someone who was an accomplished architect back in his home country. When given the chance to assume that role again after toiling away in poverty-stricken anonymity, it's that surge of excitement that propels the story forward. And seeing the way his character's demeanor shifts depending on if he's around other Jewish immigrants as opposed to Americans is fascinating. One of the key themes of The Brutalist is identity, especially trying to maintain one's own identity without becoming another cog in the machine, and this simply would not work without Brody in the role. His dynamic with Guy Pearce's character Lee Van Buren is also fantastic, and it's this dichotomy that is essentially the story's foundation. I've long been a fan of Pearce's work ever since I saw him in LA Confidential. That's another fantastic film that you should definitely check out if you haven't. And he is equally fantastic here. When Van Buren is first introduced, he immediately fulfills that sort of archetype we'd be expecting a man in this society to be. That perception is both challenged, but then subsequently strengthened as The Brutalist goes on, and in some ways, disturbingly so. But it's Felicity Jones' performance that truly floored me. She's not in it as much of the film as the other two leads, but I think that it's this limited screen time that makes her presence all the more remarkable. There's one scene towards the film's end where she delivers one of the most harrowing speeches I've seen from a film all year. I know The Brutalist will no doubt be showered with award nominations, but if Jones doesn't get that Best Supporting Actress trophy, then I'm gonna riot. That is, if Academy voters can even finish watching it. God, the Oscars are such a joke. But her limited screen time does bring to mind a certain talking point that I've seen get brought up with discourse surrounding The Brutalist. As previously stated, she doesn't appear immediately, taking much more of an active role in the movie's second half. And it's this second half that several critics have said falls flat, especially when compared to its first half. The common complaint I've been reading is that this movie sort of buckles under its own weight by this point, especially with the number of newer elements that are introduced to an already staggering narrative. I see it a bit differently. Though I do agree that the first half is a tad more engaging, it's this second half of the film that centers on deconstructing the story elements that we've seen get built up. It's kind of essential to the film's thesis, though I will admit, I'm not sure I truly grasp what the ending was saying. Bradley Corbett goes in a far different direction than I was expecting, and I do feel that repeat viewings will help solidify the themes a bit more for me. But overall, I am truly in awe of this flick. I know I continue to bring up its technical aspects, but when you see enough movies a year like I do, something of this scale is like a fountain of Dr. Pepper to a guy that's been stranded in the desert for a year, especially when it's all in service of a story as personal as this one is. Even the score by Daniel Blumberg is staggering, with triumphant beats underpinning each new development of the story's progression. It's so good that I wish we got a bit more of it. The gigantic swells seem to only come during the movie's transitional moments. But overall, this thing looks and sounds perfect. I know that it isn't playing in all of the theaters currently, but I would implore that you see this in the biggest screen possible. And in 70mm if you can too. 2024 has had no shortage of great movies, but The Brutalist, I feel, is the best. I'm gonna give The Brutalist an A+.